Welcome back to the Pathfinders podcast. I'm your host, Pete Schramm, and founder and CEO of Latitude. We're going to talk about some cool concepts today with a very, very exciting guest. The two things that we really touch on are career maps, where we've been, where we're at, and where we want to go in all 5 dimensions. And we talk about the who helped us get there, the personal board of advisors. We'll follow the Pathfinders methodology, talking about, again, those two things, career maps and the PBA. So we'll share this on LinkedIn and the other podcast platforms. But that's enough about me. Let's talk about the favorite quote or quotes, because some people are better at following directions than others, or they just want to be super duper helpful. Thanks, Lyndsay, for that one. Who shared the first quote, authored the first quote to us. Nobody has ever been inspired by micromanagement. Oh, so true. The second submission is people won't remember what you said, but they will remember how you made them feel. That one's not from Lyndsay, but Maya Angelou. Lyndsay is a speaker, founder, author, coach, podcast host, disruptor, and so much more, as you'll find out. Recognized as a top 10 business coach by Apple News and was the recipient of the 2023 Award for Innovation and Excellence. Also named Business Coach of the Year. Just 1 year. Lyndsay was a featured guest lecturer at Harvard University. She is an accomplished leader, decorated seller, and has successfully managed large, diverse, high-performing sales teams over the last 25 years. 23 of those years was spent climbing the ranks at a competitor of Lockheed Martin, IBM. In creating her company, Heartbeat for Hire, she has devoted her career to transforming leadership through building irresistible culture and modern leadership practices to get the best results from their teams. She's great at what she does, and I think she's going to share a little bit more about a new role that she's getting into today. Last piece before we bring her up on the stage is a fun fact about Lyndsay. Not much of a cook, but somehow pulled off the W in winning 2 chili cook-offs. We'll have to hear more about that and maybe get some tidbits to the secret ingredients or recipes. And an excellent amateur bartender. Lyndsay, there's probably nothing that you don't do at least half decently well. What's going on?
Hey, Pete, I'm laughing at the fun facts. So good to be with you.
Of course. So what's your go-to amateur bartender drink? When somebody says, hey, make me something.
Yeah.
If it's summertime, what is it? If it's wintertime, what is it?
So there's a gin that I absolutely love. It's called Empress, and it has butterfly pea blossom in it. So it's this indigo blue color. And when you add citrus, it turns pink. And when you add alkaline, it turns blue. So it's kind of like dinner and a show. So I can do a lot of things with that. So I like a French 75, which is Al Capone's favorite drink. Al Capone is not with us anymore, but his drink has lived on. And my cheater easy drink that I make for a lot of people is an Aperol Spritz, because that's just a lot of bang for your buck and it's delicious.
Wow. Okay. And then where did that chili cook-off winnings come from? Is that something you do with your clients?
No, I actually, my college roommate said, come out and visit us in Idaho. And we had never been. And she said, oh, by the way, it's 4th of July weekend. I entered us in a chili cook-off. And I said, okay, that's fun. Have you ever made chili? And she said, no, have you? And I said, no. I said, oh, this ought to be fun. So there was a group of us and we just walked into the market and got what we thought goes in chili, and we made it. And I think we added lots of things that don't go in chili, and
nice.
It worked. And so
I think that theme we might be able to pull out, and how we can do so many great things in this HR realm, in this people space, not coming from a people background. So we'll get into that a whole lot more, right? You talked about how you were I talked about your background, in sales, in defense contracting, in this big conglomerate organization, not necessarily in a people HR related function, but you learn so many things along the way. Lyndsay, the way we start things off here is talk about when you were growing up, what'd you want to be?
Well, I mean, early memories, which this is not really a job, but now I'm really making myself sound old. There was a dance show on TV called Solid Gold. I don't know if you remember that, there was a really beautiful Black dancer. I wanted to be her. So that wasn't a career path that was going to be achievable. But really, all I wanted to be, and it didn't really matter where, was a leader. And every job I ever had incorporated that in some way, shape, or form. So I was a natural leader as a camper, and as you know, whenever there was a leadership anything that I could do, I was like right there. That was my favorite thing to do.
So in college and on your educational journey, did you study dance and or leadership?
I danced all through high school. I was in a lot of plays, a lot of dance recitals, a lot of vocal performances. When I got to college, there was no dance. Actually, that's not true. I
Oh,
did African dance, which was totally nothing I had ever done before. That was really neat. Um,
nice.
and not any other classes or competitions or anything like that. I just fun social dancing. But the what was the other part? You said, did I dance or did I
Study
do?
leadership as
Yeah,
your
no,
degree.
so I had a degree in sociology, and I was fascinated by how people related to each other, how they connected, and I had an ethnic studies emphasis. I had one teacher, Manning Marable, who it was my first class freshman year. It was Black Studies, and I couldn't believe how much I missed. And meaning my education left out a lot of what I learned, and I was
Yeah.
really mad about it. And I just was, my eyes were opened, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a much bigger world than what I was presented, and it's on me to figure it out. And so I got really, really immersed in that. I actually was one of the only white people involved in Black Student Weekend, and I ended up being a speaker for that. And my purpose for doing that was to let them know that their experience makes mine better. And I really kind of spoke from the heart on that one. There was a lot that I learned, and I was dismayed that I didn't learn it younger, but it was on me to correct it and make sure I learned everything I could later.
Good for you. And so upon graduation, I don't know if you went into dancing at that point or if you really used your sociology degree to the fullest, or if it was continuing to build up others and made sure everybody's voice was heard. I don't, did that feed into your first job title at all?
My first job, I had a lot of part-time jobs, and I actually picked up real estate while I was in college. I had a managing broker who was like, "You're a wise ass. You seem fun. Come be my assistant." And so I was like, I work your hours. Sounds great. And so I got licensed. So I learned a lot that way. So no, I was working for a guy who liked to golf, and it was a good life, but I wouldn't say I used those skills there. Later, as I started getting into the corporate world, I really did start to use those skills. And what I didn't realize was how much I was actually using my degree. And it really wasn't until IBM where I recognized I got into the diversity advisory group. I started really doing a lot of what we can now call, business resource groups or employee resource groups. I got very, very connected with all of them. There was no dancing involved, only that was after hours kind of fun stuff.
Internal dancing and celebrations of all sorts. Don't you
Indeed.
dare say that. Just because we
Indeed.
can't see it on the outside doesn't mean you're not dancing with joy and you're happy as
True.
all get out
I
and
give you that.
inspiring others with those.
I give you that. For sure, I give you that. I will say though, what ultimately became Heartbeat for Hire is all of that learning, all of that passion, all of that love for connection, psychological safety, trust. Absolutely was the thread through my entire career. And it wasn't really until I got to build my own company where I could see how I learned all those lessons, and I could extract those leaders that taught me and the ones who gave me the really terrible lessons, the what not to do's, and why it didn't work. So yeah,
So
I would say I did use
tell
it.
us how you got into IBM. That's not a
Yeah.
very easy job to get. It's a remarkable item to have on your resume. And
Hmm.
then they kept you. Rockstar
Yeah.
Lyndsay Dowd kept you for more than
23
almost two and a
years.
half decades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
22
So
years.
how'd you get in? How'd you learn about that? What was that like?
Well, first I'll tell you, so I come from a big Blue legacy. My father was there for 41 years. My husband was there for 13. My father-in-law was 24 years. My mother-in-law worked there too. So we had quite a legacy. However, that is not how I came in. There was a company called Lotus. I think someone I knew got me an interview. I got the job and we were acquired by IBM. So it
Got it.
was a really wild ride because Lotus and IBM were very different culturally. Lotus was kind of, flip flops and dreadlocks and beer carts on Fridays. And IBM was,
Exactly the same. Yeah.
suits and protocol and you're buttoned up. And I remember having conversations with my dad and I'm like, you're going casual. He's like, oh no, never gonna happen. I'm like, oh, it is. And it's gonna, and if you come to Cambridge in a suit, you'll be laughed out of the building. So don't do that. And he's like, what do you mean? What would I wear? I'm like, jeans? He's like, oh. So there were these moments, and I can remember being in his office as a 6-year-old little girl, spinning in the chair, playing on the typewriters, because that's how long ago that was. He sold typewriters, and seeing a culture that I, at the time, thought was really normal. And to give you just a little nugget of what I saw, he said to me, he's like, come on, I want to introduce you to my secretaries. And their names were the same, like Carol and Carol or Barbara and Barbara. I don't remember what the name was. And he said, but I want to tell you, they're both blind. And I'm like, cool. Okay. 6. What do I know? So
Yeah.
I walk into this dimly lit room and they're reading Braille. They have screen readers. And I walk in quietly and they're like, hi, Lyndsay. And I said, you said they were blind. And they're like, we're not deaf. And I'm like, oh. But what was so fascinating about that time was this was part of the culture. Having people who are differently abled and who didn't look the same was normal. And so that's what I thought business was. That's what I thought, that's how it was supposed to look to me. So to find out later that not every company is like that was kind of a shock. And, we had branches then. You grew up knowing all the other IBM families. You played with the other kids. The parents had cocktails together. So it was a really kind of nice environment to grow up in. Wasn't exactly the same once I got there. A lot of those things had gone by the wayside, but the things that stuck were the relationships and the opportunities for leadership, and the things you could choose to involve yourself in.
So as you're climbing the ladder, you went back, after the six-year-old Lyndsay spinning
Right.
around in the chair. You went back and said, I'm going to work here. I'm going to make a bit of a career here.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about some of the skills that you put onto your career map as you
Mm.
went from role to role to role, because in the career map, we talk
Yeah.
about the skills, the title, the achievements and accomplishments,
Yeah.
education, and some of the fun stuff. So how
Yeah.
were you kind of building as you're progressing and flying truly up and around the career ladder?
Well, let me start by saying I didn't know jack about technology.
Jack
So
Jack was over at GE. That's okay. Don't worry.
so I mean some kids got purses for big milestones. I got OS2s and computers that I didn't really know how to use. So that was like employee discount. I'm giving her a computer, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. But once I got to Lotus, I was in customer service,
Yeah.
and that I understood because I'm helping customers. So it's building relationships, it's making them feel heard, making them feel seen. That wasn't so hard. And then I started recognizing it was sales. It was inside sales was really what the job was. And I started working with a team in the Midwest. So I was their inside rep, they were the field rep, and so I got to kind of see how people sold, and I got to help uncover leads, and I got to kind of be part of a team and really started noticing who was doing it well, who needed more help. I could look around the cubicle farm and be like, so and so's figured it out. I want to go learn from them. I want to
Yeah.
see, what they're doing that I'm not doing. And I honed in on this thing where I had really big clients like General Motors and big automotive who were not using our licensing correctly. And part of my job was to focus on software renewals. And you kind of calculate, okay, if you have 4,000 people, you need 4,000 licenses. And it says on your, homepage of your company that you have 10,000 employees. So why do we have 4,000 licenses? And they're like, oh, you didn't see that. And I'm like, no, I think I did see that. And so it became this opportunity that I recognized of, you are under licensed and you owe us money. And so I got really good at it. And IBM had just started, Lotus had just started a compliance division. And so they said, Lyndsay, come lead a team doing that. And so I got to cover the whole East Coast, which was amazing. I was working with the legal department, and we were just doing it for Lotus. And then they said, we want to do this for all the software brands. And so my territory increased, the people I was working with increased. And the coolest part about that job was I got to work with all the different sales teams, and I got to coach them. And I got to say, here are the things you're not going to say. Here are the things you do want to say. And I'll be the bad cop, and you keep your relationship intact. But I learned so many lessons through that job. And it exposed me to an enormous amount of sales leaders, an enormous amount of people, because I got to come in to all their team meetings. I got to really sit and listen. And when I was tired of that job, about every 3 years, I took a new job. So give or take a little, 6 months here, 6 months there. And when I was ready for a new job, I kind of had my pick of the litter of which sales manager to work for, because I knew them all so well. And that was a real thread throughout my entire career: relationships, rapport, nurturing those relationships, making sure leaders understood who I was, what I was capable of. And I ended up running quite a few first of a kind businesses for IBM. And part of that was because I always called my teams Mavericks and Hustlers. I felt I was the same. And I liked building things. I liked fixing broken things, because I knew we were starting from zero. So you only had one direction to go. So you couldn't make it worse than it was. But yeah, that was kind of the common thread through all the jobs. And I will say one more thing that IBM did really well. And I called it building a culture of advocacy. And that basically allowed us to interview with other executives outside of our reporting chain who didn't know you, who would say, yeah, tell me your story. And you'd get to tell them. And one time I was talking to a VP and she said, tell me your story. And I did. And she goes, oh my gosh, you've done so many things. And I said, well, based on what you heard, do you have any roles on your team? And she's like, yeah, I have 5, and you can choose. Which one would you like? And she went through and explained them all. And I'm like, whoo, this is exciting. And so I went down this path of, I was working on counter fraud. So it was working with all these companies on how they deal with fraud. And I ended up speaking to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. I ended up partnering with Ernst & Young and some really big companies and building great relationships with them and getting to travel the world. So it was very cool opportunities, but a lot of it was just because our executives allowed for that dialogue and allowed you to be open to exploring other stuff. And I was the kind of leader that if somebody said they wanted to leave my team, I always supported them, even if I thought they weren't ready. And when my team would be like, why are you letting them go? They've only been here 6 months. Because I want only people that want to be here on this team. And if they want to go somewhere else, I want them to succeed, and I'll recommend them, and that's cool. But I'm not going to keep anybody here, because then what kind of work are they going to do if they say, no, you have to stay?
It's that quote of the CEO and the CFO, right? Oh my gosh, all of our people are leaving. A little bit of a different take on it, but what if we invest in them and they leave? Well, the other piece is what if we invest in them and they stay, right? And I think conversely to your point is, what if we try and keep people unnecessarily? A guest we had on the show recently said that he never gives an opportunity for a counter offer whenever it comes to a different, job. Somebody's already gone along and say, hey, I'm working for you, boss, but oh, by the way, I got this other job, and
Mhm.
I'm already, negotiating the salary and everything. Here it is. What are you going to do for me? He
Mm,
says, I'll wish you the best of luck.
mm,
And so it's just an interesting way to go about it. And you probably ask, why are you
mhm.
leaving? Right, a little bit of exit interview
Yeah.
piece. But Lyndsay, talk to us a little bit more um, about who helped guide you along
Mhm,
the way. You said, "Hey, I found a job opportunity by just filling one of those, board seats on the
mhm,
personal board of advisors, right?
mhm.
Somebody that could be a champion, a sponsor, an advocate,
Yeah.
and just asking the question, hey, what else is out there? So that's where you can
Mhm.
find some more of the what on the career map. But how did you continue to find great people to put onto your personal board of advisors
Yeah.
throughout your career?
So I think because I had a lot of exposure in some of those earlier roles, I met a lot of people and I really nurtured that network.
Hmm.
I kept in touch with a lot of these people, but I definitely had some leaders along the way who were in my corner, who went to bat for me, who, if I needed a reference, they would waste no time and provide them. And one story I'll share.
Yeah.
Was a manager that I was a friend of hers. She was a new manager to me. And I said I had to present what my plan was going to be when I was a client exec. And this is a really big job, really big quota, a lot of responsibility, a lot of strings attached to the account that I covered. And so I'm presenting my plan to her, and I'm about 2/3 of the way through. And she says, "Girl, I've got your back. Now fly." And those words were so powerful. It took my breath away, and it let me know that if I fail, somebody is there who's ready to support me. And she has stayed in my corner all this time, but what I was able to do with that emotion, those words, that fire, I turned it around to my big team of 55 people, and I'm like, what haven't we tried? Who haven't we talked to? What haven't we done? And we ended up crushing our numbers. We made a ton of money and created this environment of fun, of hustle, but not like burnout hustle, but hustle like, come on, you got this, and let's try something else. And I have to introduce you to this person. Have you met this
Yeah.
person? And it was a really fun way to work. Um, when you can create that kind of psychological safety, you can do magic. And I was lucky to have a few leaders like that. So I had another one who promoted me twice. And one time the first time she asked me, she says, "So how do you want to run the business?" And I looked at her and I'm like, "You're you're asking me? Oh, wow." And she was like, "Well, you've been doing it longer. You know more. So tell me, what do you want to do?" And I just felt so liberated. She gave me so much autonomy, and we crushed it. And because of that autonomy she gave me, I would do anything for her. And you know what? All of the other managers that reported to her, we all felt that way. And our teams felt that way about us. So our team, I think we crushed it something like 16, 18 quarters in a row. It was pretty impressive. To be able
What
to
what
do that.
everybody's not seeing behind you, Lyndsay, on the other side of your room, your office over there, are all the trophies. I mentioned only a couple of the awards and accolades that you got, but if she was to turn her camera around, and those who are just listening can't see all of it, but just trust me, there's a lot of great things over there.
Yeah, there's a couple. It's all right.
So Lyndsay, after you changed a lot of different aspects of IBM, at some point you said, "Hey, I have this itch to go out on my own, right? I want
Well,
to
it
help
wasn't exactly
people."
that way. It
Okay.
wasn't an itch to go out on my own. I actually was sought out by another company who said, "Come and manage a sales team for us." And I
Mhm.
said, "Okay." And I packed up my big blue legacy and off I went. And I was there for 6 short months and they fired me. And I was gutted. I was devastated. I thought I was the only executive that was ever fired on earth. I thought no one would ever want to work with me again. And after a month of licking my wounds, I asked myself 3 questions. I said, what am I really good at? What do I love to do? And how can I help people the most? and I knew how to build modern leaders, and I knew how to create irresistible culture that drives results. And so I started Heartbeat for Hire, and that was almost 3 years ago. And I started my podcast, and I wrote a couple books, and I started coaching and keynote speaking and delivering LinkedIn workshops. And I never planned on being an entrepreneur. I wasn't interested in that. I liked working for a big company. I liked working for a company, period. So being an entrepreneur was a huge challenge. And I thought, even given all of the things that I had done, I'm like, oh, I can do this. I've done really hard things. It's not the same skill set, Pete. It's really not.
And you wear all the different hats. I'll never forget whenever I've, had to send out my first contract as an entrepreneur. I'm like, okay, perfect. This is super exciting. I'm just going to call up the contracts team. And I'm like, oh,
I don't have
Campbell's not over there anymore.
Yeah,
Jason's not over there anymore.
Nope.
I'm like, hey, contracts. Hey, what's up? Right. So you're talking to yourself and you just take off one hat, put the other hat on.
Right.
And it's remarkable how you flip the switch of having stability at the large organization, maybe not as much flexibility, but now you got tons of flexibility, right?
Yeah.
Even, too much, especially in the early days.
Yeah.
And you have to figure out where you build in some of that process. And you have the great background with the, rigor and SOPs for everything at the big organization. But tell us more about that piece. Yeah.
Well, to your point, you talked about having that personal board of advisors. That became hugely important because there was so much I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I had done really hard things for a really long time, I had people booking my travel. I had people taking care of my taxes. I had people doing my accounts receivable. I had people doing my, invoicing. Like, I had to learn all of this. I had to build a tech stack. Oh my God, I sold technology. How do you build a tech stack as an entrepreneur? So I had to think about these things. And there was just so much I didn't know. And what I wished I had done earlier, which I've done over the last year, is be much more aware that your community and your personal board of advisors is not just in your company. I joined a community called the Outlier Project, and that's like 750 people who choose to live extraordinary lives. It's a lot of entrepreneurs, but it's a lot of people that have done incredible, incredible things. And when you're with a group of like-minded people, they challenge you. You get opportunities you've never had before. I mean, I got to speak at Harvard through these people. I got a billboard in Times Square through these people, like pretty incredible stuff. And I think my advice to anybody, that even if you are happy in your job and you think everything is hunky-dory, there is no such thing as job security. There is only career security, and you have to build that for yourself. And so nurturing a network, building a network, leveraging a tool like LinkedIn is paramount. That will help you so much.
No such thing as job security. There is career security.
Only career.
Never heard of that. I like it.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And this is why you need a personal brand. This is why you need to stand for something. And it doesn't mean that it's set in stone. If you decide at age 30, this is my brand and this is how I'm talking, and at age 35, that's not how you feel anymore, nobody's holding that against you. You just change it. It's okay. It's yours.
So you're out on your own. You're doing this work. You've added a lot of tools to your toolbox. You've figured out your career map. What else are you doing? Tell us a little bit about what Heartbeat for Hire is doing for some of your clients. And if we want to get a hold of you, where are we going to find you? And what kind of questions or problems are we going to have whenever we call up Chief Revenue Officer? Oh, actually, hold on. That reminds me. You have to talk.
We got to go there.
Yeah.
So I'll answer the Heartbeat
part 1, part 2.
thing. I'll answer the Heartbeat for Hire thing, and then I'll talk a little bit about Intry. But Heartbeat for Hire right now, it's my podcast, and I'm keynoting. So that's really the bulk of what I'm doing with Heartbeat for Hire now, because I have taken the rest of my energy and I'm putting that towards this company called Intry Careers. And Intry, we have patented resume software. How this came about was really interesting. I mentioned I'd been doing LinkedIn workshops, and telling your story is a sweet spot of mine. And I got asked to participate in a boot camp in July for job seekers. And we knocked it out of the park. It was
Mhm.
phenomenal. It was this full frontal approach that gave people everything they would need. So
At a really small company, right? It was just like a little mom and pop shop on the side of
not
the
quite
road.
a mom and pop shop. I mean, we have patents and we've got a software
No, no,
development.
no, no. At the place you did the workshop, right?
Oh, you mean the boot camp?
Yeah, yeah. Where you did the boot camp.
No, that was through LinkedIn. That was
No,
it.
no, I know, but what I'm trying to share is it was for a huge couple of companies. Like the people that are saying you rock are not just tiny. I was trying to set you up for an alley oop there. My goodness.
I missed it. Sorry.
That's all right. But I wanted to brag about you and saying,
Thank
hey,
you.
people at large entities, we don't have
Yes.
to call them out by name, but they're the Fortune 500s, Fortune 100s, I guess, that are saying we love what Lyndsay's
Yes.
up to.
They're all kind of freaking out because they're looking at what we built with this boot camp as an alternative for their outplacement services.
Yeah.
And when you look at the landscape and you hear statistics like 92% of companies are going to be laying people off in the next year, that's a lot of business. That's a lot of opportunity. It's also, to me, the part that was so important was it's still very on brand with what I'm doing. It's still coming from a very heart-centered, very empathetic place where people are losing their jobs. There is a fair amount of PTSD over losing a job, something I'm very familiar with. And being able to help them in a 360-degree way. So new resumes, interviewing tips and techniques, their unique value prop, speaking with recruiters, salary negotiation, and mental health, and so much more. They walk out of those boot camps with their shoulders back, knowing they have a solid brand. They have an absolute bulletproof, unique value prop. And they're not afraid to network. They're not afraid to talk to anyone. They'll be ready at the drop of a hat to interview, and that is massive. So we identified a whole bunch of different revenue streams with Intry, and that's what we're working on now. And so that's just been really recent and very, very exciting.
I love that. Whenever we recorded the podcast together on Heartbeat for Hire,
Yes.
we talked a little bit before, a little bit after, got to chat a little bit more today. But there's so much alignment
Yes.
between the Entry mission and what we do over at Latitude, right? And the piece
Mm-hmm.
of how do we invest in our people? And let's face it, there's always going to be some kind of turnover, but how do we retain the right talent? And even if there's an opportunity to leave, how can we arm them with those tools? How do
Well,
we
I love that you I
instill?
love
Yeah,
that you brought that up, Pete, because one of the things that's happening now is companies are calling us and they're saying, I'm going to have to lay off 50 executives.
yep,
And in the litigious world that we live in, a lot of these companies are getting sued. And when you can say, hey, listen, there's a layoff coming, but I've arranged for you to have this intensive, bespoke program that's going to give you everything you need to land on your feet. We still really care about you. And you always have a spot here with us. Right now, we cannot keep you, but we want you to go out into the world prepared. That is a very different tone to you've been laid off. We
yep,
paid for services. We hope you utilize them. Goodbye. Because I know I had so much PTSD about being fired. I thought it was affiliated with the company. I wanted nothing to do with them. And it was a
right.
mistake. I could have really leveraged some of those services. But I think when you come at it the other way and you come at it from a really empathetic position of we over rotated, we thought we could really withstand this kind of headcount. We really can't, but we want to take care of our people. It's a very different mindset. And it's a very good thing for leaders to think about.
100%. We'll make sure to be following you in Entry. That's INTRY dot careers. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So Intry dot careers. Lyndsay, I'm going to ask two other questions before we get to the wrap up here. The first one's around how do you make time for mentoring and for
Mm.
yourself and for others? How do you build it into your work day? How do you keep it consistent to step back and look at hey, am I headed in the right direction? Looking at my career map, you got a lot of things going on.
I mean, for me, the community is huge. And
Mhm.
because our community that I'm in is so big, there's a wide age range, 20s up to 80s. And it's really important to give back. I do a lot of coffee chats. I do a
Yeah.
lot of one-on-one with people. And though I'm not individually coaching anymore because I don't have bandwidth for it, um, I absolutely talk to a lot of people in my network, and part of it is being very intentional about who you bring into your network. And when I see people doing great things, I always shine the light on them, and I always want them to know that I'm cheering for them. And I think because very often they don't have a leader that's doing that, and I know what that does for someone when they feel seen. So I do make a lot of time for up and coming young salespeople, and certainly up and coming leaders. And the other thing, I've got the podcast, which you were a guest on. And my goal with that show was to illustrate what good leadership looks and feels like. And I get really nice feedback from people who have listened to it who say, oh, I love that show with Pete Schramm. I learned so much. And, I wasn't thinking of it that way. Well, that's the point. I want, and whether it's an Olympian or a world champion athlete or a CEO or an author or a doctor or a scientist, everybody's coming at this topic from a different angle. And I don't know how it's going to get through your head. So I just hope that there's some way that one of my guests is making a difference for you. And this is like my way of giving back to the people I care about and my community.
So, Lyndsay, you gave us a good action item for our listeners. Comment, right, as you're listening to this, go back to the LinkedIn post and give Lyndsay a shout out, and maybe even tell her which Heartbeat for Hire episode you went and listened to. So
Yes.
you got some homework, listeners of Pathfinders, to go check out Heartbeat for Hire again. We'll also tag my show with you on there. The next question, Lyndsay, talks around this methodology of Pathfinders, right? Career Map, Personal Board of Advisors. You mentioned and alluded to the concepts a few times throughout our conversation today, but I want to talk about the value and the benefits two different ways, right? Where do you see it? Early career, mid-career, helping individuals?
Yep.
And then where do you see this helping organizations?
Yeah. I think helping individuals, it's obvious. I mean, if you can surround yourself with people who challenge you, who get to know you, who aren't afraid to kick your butt, and who are like, you're better than that. You can do this. I mean, there is a huge amount of fear in your work trajectory because
Yeah.
you are always being put into positions where there's things you don't know, there's new things that you have to learn. And you know what? Nobody knows everything. It's
Right.
okay. It's okay to be green, but it's really important to be curious. And when you can surround yourself with people who are doing it better than you will always learn from them. But at the same point, you've got to turn around and give back. And that's when you're going to have the most fulfilling network, because it's balanced on both sides. So that's from the individual perspective. From a company perspective, as leaders, making space for people to create those relationships is critical. And the thing I mentioned before, creating this culture of advocacy at IBM, that was so normal to me. I thought every company did that. And it wasn't until I left that I realized, oh, nobody's doing this. Oh my gosh, or very few. And sometimes some people say they do it, but then they get really insecure as soon as somebody says, hey, could I go talk to somebody else? You have to, at the top, say, I want a culture where we retain our talent, where we keep our talent on the bench, or not on the bench. We have a large bench of talent who can work. And I have a news flash for everybody. There are no people that go and work for companies for 20 years anymore. That doesn't happen. So you
Average
have
4.2 years at a company.
yeah.
And if that's on overall, Lyndsay, and it's close to 2.5 years under the age of 35.
Yeah. You have to operate with, I know this isn't your forever job. And so Steve
Mhm.
Cadigan, who is the CHRO of LinkedIn, he was the first CHRO. He said, we can't compete with sign-on bonuses from Google and, crazy salaries from Meta. Like we just can't. So what we're going to say is we want your time with us to be the most fulfilling, the most rewarding, the most exciting,
Yep.
knowing you're going to go. but we want you to always think fondly of us. And when you come at it from that perspective, people want to stay.
Yep.
And it's you have to recognize it's not going to be your people all the time. There are going to be people that want to move on for a myriad of reasons. It could be personal, it could be professional, it could be financial. You don't know. But you have to say, one of the things I did as a leader was the first thing I would do is go to HR and say, give me, where is everybody with their salary? I need to understand that, because I need to know if I need to re-level people. I need to know if there's people that are underpaid. I need to know if I've got overpaid people because they came from another team or another organization, because that happens. But when you can immediately out the gate look at your team and understand where everybody is and create a more level playing field, that looks good on you. Second thing I recommend as a leader, go on a listening tour. A listening tour is critical. You are saying you don't know everything. And we already said nobody does. But when you go and say, give me the landscape, tell me what's going on. What are the politics here? Who are people that I have to watch, both good and bad? What's working? What's not working? What would you want to fix if you had a magic wand? First of all, what this does is it instills trust. It's saying, I want to listen to you. I want to hear what you have to say. And then you can be decisive in the actions that you need to take as a leader. But that's a really crucial thing that the best leaders know how to do. But I've certainly had leaders that kind of operate from, there's a new sheriff in town and it's my way or the highway.
Guns blazing.
That isn't so inspiring, and it makes people really nervous and it makes them disengage.
So, Lyndsay, you just answered the question that I typically round up with, which is one tidbit that you want to take away with. So I'm going to skip right past that, and we're going to go right into the recap here, where I'll talk a little bit about our show, and then we'll close things up. So, Lyndsay Dowd, thank you very much for joining us. Starting off with the tidbits around Empress Gin and the colorful creator, from bartending skills to the chili cook-off champion. You wanted to be a dancer and a leader, but ditched the dancing dream and studied sociology. Opened up your eyes to what you didn't know you didn't know. A little bit of real estate with a golfing guy in there, and then IBM. And we'll hear a lot more about the diversity advisory group throughout your story, but it came from more than 100 years of legacy from your family at Big Blue. You arrived to IBM by acquisition, and you shared with us a little rewind into the eye-opening experience with the non-sighted. Not all companies' cultures are created equal. Building relationships came up at least 12 different times today. You help voices be heard. You went into a role with inside sales in the Midwest. You learned from the best, and you led by example. You grew. You taught others. You guided them. Sales teams across the U.S. found the Lyndsay legacy of lifting others up. You showed us that you can be entrepreneurial inside of a big company and brought advocacy across the organization. Walk the walk and talk the talk. Finding jobs from mentoring chats. Your PBA had your back. Go and fly. You got hired away, and then you got fired. And you ask yourself, what do I love? What am I good at? What does the world need? And after 1 month in the dumps, you forgave yourself, but never forgot. And I want to make sure that everybody remembers that one. You kept going, and you unlocked new levels of growth from that point, being aware that your PBA is not just inside your company, and if your badge changes, they can stay with you. No such thing as job security, but there is indeed, yes, career security. Check out Heartbeat for Hire. And also a reminder that you're the Chief Revenue Officer at Intry Careers. Astounding statistic that 92% of companies are likely to lay off folks in the next 12 months. Take proactive placement preparation. Reach out to Lyndsay if that's something that your organization's looking at. Thank you for shining a light on others and helping them be seen. You shared that career maps can reduce the fear of the unknown in the future, and having a PBA support system helps a lot. Companies that crush it create this culture from the top down and take action consistently, empowering people from the bottoms up. Share the tip to recalibrate compensation up, down, and around. and gave the advice to go on a leadership listening tour. Go to the Gemba. What should we start, stop, continue, shift doing? So, Lyndsay, thanks for the reminder that relationships really matter. We're unstoppable whenever we build a foundation of trust and psychological safety. What a pleasure today.
Thanks, man. That was a really nice recap. Well done.